I did something this past week that you're not supposed to do. Or I didn't do something that you are supposed to do, I suppose, in that I went a whole day without posting on social media. And explicitly, what I mean is in terms of TikTok. If you didn't know, I also post on TikTok on a regular basis. You can find me under the same handle if you're interested in that. But for the last, since I got on there, probably 2.5 years ago or so, I skipped a day. I went a whole day. I didn't post a single. And I've been posting one episode or one new post each day for a while. I developed a system where I would batch record like 4 or 5 different things, and then I would post them one a day later. And so I'm always posting, or I'm recording things in advance, and then by the time they end up being published, it's been days or sometimes even weeks afterwards. But for some reason, the app stopped functioning correctly, wouldn't let me access the app's features correctly, and so I wasn't able to use the drafts that I had and such. And so the things that I had ready, couldn't use them. And so I realized early in the day that I was not going to have a chance to be able to try and record something really quick and throw it up there. And so I just, oh well. And there's a weird thing about it that, on the one hand, like a stress, an anxiety about what are people going to think? Is the app going to, or the program, the platform, going to restrict my access to things because I broke a streak or something of that nature? Like, I don't know. Like, all these weird thoughts started tumbling through my mind. And, of course, it's just frickin' TikTok. It's not the end of the world. It's not like I skipped a day eating or something. But like I said, I had this irrational sense that just something was going to happen. And it's been a couple of days since, and guess what? Nothing happened. I'm probably not going to get anything posted today either, so that would mean that it's a couple of times now that I've missed, not updated in the last week. And in the wake of that, realizing that, it's almost a little liberating. It seems like at first I got on the app during 2020 the same way everyone else did. That just bored, going to work, coming home, couldn't go out, couldn't go do anything, and so just lacking in entertainment, lacking in nonsense in my life. I added that stream of nonsense to it. Had no interest in ever publishing anything. I was just going to watch and such, and that's what I was doing. After about 6 months, I started posting, and then about a year later, I got to lives where I was able, I got the 1,000 subscribers you need in order to do lives, and then from there, I'm at like 13 something, 13K. And it went from something I did as a hobby just for no reason to something I almost crossed over to the point where, like, well, this is a ministry. Like, there's all sorts of rationale that I've used at different times to try and justify the amount of time that I wasted on it. But at the end of the day, it was just leisure. It's just something I was doing for no real meaningful purpose. And now that that window is closed, because I started off following the guidance, I guess you could say, of all of the gurus on social media, the online influencers and such, of you need to be producing 10 fresh streams of content every day, 10 fresh new posts. So I did that for an exhaustingly short period of time. and then dropped it to like 5. I was trying to do 5 a day, and even that was too much. And then when my daughter was born, dropped it. I've had 1 a day going for probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years total. 1 a day. Sometimes I would squeeze in a second one if some goofball thought he had something to say about my content. But for the most part, it's just been 1 a day. And even that sometimes was exhausting. Like, reached the point of I didn't even have time for one. Now that I have 2 jobs, I probably should just let it go. But who knows? Since I slipped, if you want to call it that, since I let a whole day slip by, and now even a second whole day slip by without posting, there's a little bit of a liberty to it. Almost, I saw somebody, I was talking to somebody about this very same thing, and a woman commented in, this was offline, like just added comment, real life, commented that it's kind of how getting your hair cut or dyed or changed as a woman is. Like, just there's this anxiety that builds up of how are people going to react to it, and then done, and then it's never quite what you expected. It never lives up to itself. And I've heard other people make comments about tattoos or piercings in a similar way. Like, are people going to notice? Are they going to have comments about it? And then, or people that have a major milestone, like they graduate from something, or they make a big purchase of some kind for the first time. They finally get their own place. They think there's going to be this huge thing. And just life continues on. Life just keeps on going. And in some ways that's the way it should be, but all of this is tied together by the fact that we're in the middle of Lent now. It started on Ash Wednesday, which was also Valentine's Day, ironically, but there's so many people throughout my life, having functioned as a youth pastor, a children's pastor, different functions of that sort, that there's been so many instances when people have suggested doing social media fasts. It's kind of the hip, cool thing to do if you are in or around youth ministry, for especially teenagers to fast social media for this period or at all, or they during their resolution at year end, I'm going to give up social media, something of that nature. It's usually initiated by something, a crisis, more or less. A breakup, a friend dissolution, drama, whatever. Makes them want to do this thing, but either way. And I've always kind of chuckled at it. On the one hand, because back in those days, social media hadn't quite crested the way that it has now, where it's so ubiquitous that you and your mother, your grandmother, your grandchildren are all using these things at the same time, and often for the same purposes, and that they're also so corrupting influences. The way that people can, like, it used to be, if you're being bullied at school, at least you can go home. Or if you're being bullied at home, at least you can spend the weekend or spend the night at someone else's house, or you can go to school to get away from it. Somewhat, right? It was all so spherical in that way. Nowadays, with social media reaching into our very souls and just peeking over our shoulders in all of these ways, that people can bully you from far away, from other continents. People can reach into your very soul and take stuff out, and just the way that they react to them is ridiculous. The way that they try to haunt your life with these things, and the way they try to supervise your decisions and such, like, it's insidious. And so the way that it's also been so infiltrated or infested with sexually explicit and sensually seductive content is just like, sex has obviously been the thing that can sell anything for generations. It's one of the most base human desires, so it can sell anything to anyone at any time. And it's something that cars and beer and wine and tobacco have all figured out generations ago. But the way it sells these platforms is different, at least in my mind. It's different. It's not quite the same thing. And about probably 3 months ago, maybe, like, it was after the turn of the year, so maybe quite like 2 months ago or so, I saw this just flood of what can only be described as pornographic material on Facebook, and the ads that are placed and stuff like that, that a lot of them's not blockable, it's not removable in any way, you can't avert your eyes from it. And it was coincidental with the Instagram trying to lobby its public persona to get Congress to pass laws, or the FCC to pass laws about parental approval for like minors to be able to install apps and such. It started right about then, so I think it's coincidental at the very least, if not causal, that people are moving their content around to try to avoid certain kinds of censorship that they think might be coming in the future on other platforms. But it's just, you can't even call it a thirst trap anymore. You can't even call it something of that nature. It's just porn. It's just pornographic, explicit material. And I was just, what is this? And it's everywhere. I've noticed, like, there are shows that I would love to be able to watch them if it wasn't for the fact that they have this needless, irrelevant sexual content in it for no reason. Just, I'd love to be able to consume some of these things. There's certain games I'd love to be able to play if it wasn't for stuff like this in them. And just, I'm not willing to put that stuff in front of me. Younger me wouldn't have any issue with it, and it's something that's definitely changed to me recently, and everyone has to navigate that on their own, whether or not you feel like you can handle it. Whatever, let the Holy Spirit convict you. But I'm sick of it. And so, by accident, if we want to say it that way, I've kind of engaged in something of a social media fast, that I'm just simply making other prioritized decisions over it, and life is going on, and that I'm taking back power, decision-making ability from it. And I use that language explicitly because I know a lot of parents of teenagers that are involved in different extracurricular activities where, one instance, teenage girl, she wants to go on a missions trip in the summer, and so the question was, is band going to let her do that? And I'm just, who's in charge here? Who's the one that's making decisions for this kid? And the parents being like, no, if they don't like that you're not going to be able to do this, or you have to say no to that on account as a part of the band, then they can call me instead. And I have so much respect for that, of just taking the power back of who's in charge here, who's making this decision. And so I find that interesting, that it's something of a coincidence. I didn't mean to sacrifice or to fast social media during this phase, but if that's what it ends up being, I welcome it, and I welcome whatever kind of changes end up manifesting because of it too. So It's not too late if you are interested in starting something for Lent. Like, for instance, I mean, keeping in mind, it started Ash Wednesday. It goes all the way up to Resurrection Sunday, which is the last week of March. So if you're interested, like, it's never too late to get in there and get in the game. Put something on the altar and say, tell God, this isn't in control of me. You are. This is not the thing that dictates my behaviors. You are. This is not the thing that is going to rule my life or my decision making. You are. You can do that today. Additionally, something else a lot of Christians have done throughout history for Lent is they've not simply given up stuff, but they've given away stuff. They've gone through their closets and their clothing and separated things out that they have no value in or interest in and shared that with the poor. They've done it with their delicacies. That's what Mardi Gras is. It's to clean out the larders so they won't be tempted by the fine foods they're supposed to be giving up. They won't be in the house. But they would also, since obviously you can't keep a hen from laying eggs during this period, they would take those things that are being laid, or if an animal just reaches the point where it has to be milked, they would take those things and they would share them with the poor or with others that are going without by nature rather than by choice, as a means of growing in charity and growing in their love for the brethren. So those are all options, and I would encourage you to do that as well, because it's a very humbling, it's a very refining process to do those things as well. It's kind of the spawn for the idea of a spring cleaning. So I would encourage you to maybe pursue or to consider or to examine those sort of things as well.